Hello and welcome to the Artisan School. My name is David. I am one of the instructors along with Stacy here. And this is what we do. We geek out to Pianocraft. We geek out to the work that is working on pianos. And we do this 3 times a week. If you're watching this on YouTube, welcome. Like, subscribe, all the things. If you're watching this and you're in the middle of the Pianocraft or Artisan course, hopefully you're enjoying it. Hopefully you're going to find this video helpful because you're probably just in the section where we're talking about burning and traveling, and you may be a little bit confused, and this is here for you because this is what we're going to do. We're going to do more of a deep dive into the burning and traveling, specifically burning and traveling our grand hammers. So let's back up a little bit. With one of the other sessions we just did, we learned how to just kind of go through and full on do the repinning of our grand hammer action, grand hammers in our action. And now before we install the stack back on the screws, it's time for us to go and do our traveling of the shanks. Again, the traveling of the shanks is we want those shanks to all move up evenly. And then we're going to be squaring off the hammers. And by squaring off the hammers, we're going to be tilting them to the left or to the right so that they're squared off. And we're going to be doing a series of burning techniques for that. So let's talk about the tools that we need. By the way, a show of hands or like do a thumbs up or do a whatever. How many people have done this, not necessarily on a whole action, but at least on 1 or 2? Has anybody done that? Oh, yeah. Sweet. By the way, Stephanie, did you get your yawn yet?
I have not. I've been dealing with a bunch of the stuff.
Okay, it's on my list. You've been on my mind with that yawn, so eventually you'll get it.
Every single day.
We geek out to tools here. Speaking of tools, what you need in order to do this is a small series of tools. You're going to need your You're going to need some kind of a flathead or Phillips head screwdriver, depending on the actual screws that are in your action. You are going to need some kind of a dowel. So having some kind of dowel stock, because this is what you're going to be using to go underneath the hammers and lift them up vertically. Stacy, can you still see me, by the way? Good. Cool.
You're good. It's a nice camera.
Yeah, nice camera. It is a nice camera. Still paying off this camera, by the way. So then we're also going to go ahead and have some kind of traveling tape or traveling paper. Now, I like to use traveling tape. Some people swear by the paper, and that is just little strips of paper that you can kind of wet down and then place it on the bottom each side of the flange. I'm a big fan of the tape because it's sticky back, it stays where I want it, and this is great for that. Stace, do we get these at Schaff? Is that where we get them?
Yeah, you can buy it at Schaff or Howard Supply, and I think even Irwin's Piano Supply.
Okay, cool. So these are all available there. That's awesome. You're going to need some kind of a heat source. Now, the cool way of doing this, I used to have the coolest, it was an alcohol burning lamp. I actually think it's on the picture of this thumbnail. And I had it, I bought it, I loved it. They used to sell them at Schaff. They don't sell them anymore. I've looked everywhere for that thing and I loved it. And it worked really well, but it did do this thing that I didn't like. And that is it left smoke marks on the shanks themselves. So you can go find a lamp with an open flame. You can use a torch. You could use a lighter. But at the end of the day, as much as I don't this is the most user-friendly tool to do the squaring and burning of your hammers. This is an embossing gun, and it is really portable. It is really easy to use, various speeds. I think I got this one on Amazon. I'm guessing it was $15, and it works great. And yeah, it's a nice tool to have. Allows you to kind of heat up those shanks and do your burning. But those are really what you're going to need. What's up, Michael? What are you gonna say?
So David, I actually use the Weller Pyro Pen. That's a butane.
Oh.
I learned this from Lucy Erlacher there in Missouri.
Okay. How do you like it?
I love it.
You love it?
Yes, because it has a tip for a soldering iron. You remove that, have a tip for it just becomes hot air. You go, and specifically, I mainly do it for uprights because that's mostly what I work on. But you can get in and just work right in between the upright, up and down. Makes it real easy.
That's awesome. I'm gonna have to get something like
It
that.
is kind of pricey. I will warn you that the embossing gun's a much more affordable option.
What's the price point on something like that?
It's a couple hundred, I think.
Whoa!
Yeah.
High roller.
But
No,
I've used it consistently since I bought it, and it's paid off just because it's ease of use.
yeah, the ease of use is a big deal. Absolutely. If you find those tools, and you're gonna have that for a long time. So, all right, let's start.
The other thing is you don't have to have you don't have a cord.
Oh, that's right. I mean, that's huge because. But how often do you have to refill it? Is it
Not that often.
really?
No, I'm
Oh,
about
that's
due to
okay.
refill it. So,
Got it.
but yeah, I haven't. I've only like filled it maybe once over
Wow.
a year and a half.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get one of those.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Michael, did you say it blows hot air in addition
Yes.
to the flame?
Well, the flame is
Or either
embedded.
or?
It has a little ceramic disc that heats up, and the air flows through it, and it's just hot air going out.
Oh, that's nice. Because my
And it just
butane flame, I end up burning the shank so quickly.
yeah, it hides the actual flame down in it.
You must be wondering, like, what is all the strips? I don't know why I do it this way. I just have. You'd be going through a lot of. I mean, this would be really bad if I'm having to go through this much. I'm not usually having to do this much by way of traveling, but I kind of like to just kind of drape it over just so that it's ready and available for me. And I always start in the treble section, which is right here. So this is where I always start. Wow, hot dog. Look at that. My wife Kathy asked me, like, so we're done doing a lot of the filming. What do you want to do with the cameras and stuff? I'm like, I think I'll still use them for these live events because I think they're really good quality. And I'm like, we can zoom nice, folks. We got that. Look at that. All right. So when we're talking about traveling our hammers, what we're going to be doing to check this is using a rod of some kind. We're going to go ahead and put this rod underneath the hammers themselves, like so. And I usually have it so that it's kind of draped right underneath and sitting on that. What am I saying? Sitting on the
Rest rail.
Yeah, exactly.
The
So they're just
cushions.
sitting right there. And just so you kind of have an idea of what I'm doing right there. And so I'm going to slowly, carefully lift upwards on this dowel. And I want to see the spacing, this dark spacing. I want to make sure that all of that is kept the same as I travel these hammers upwards. And by the way, when I'm doing this, I'm only going up to the string. So again, the string is about here. I'm not going up a foot off up here. You know, I'm not going really high. I'm just going to where that string would be. And so let's go ahead and start looking from this side and just kind of see how these hammers look as they move upwards. So here we go.
Have you seen the coat hanger trick, David? Instead of using a
The
wooden
what?
rod, you use a coat hanger,
No.
like a wire one. So since you can get it's a lot thinner than a piece of wood. You can really raise those hammers, like as if they were at the rest position. Yes, Jim Busby has a video on his channel, and I always carry a coat hanger. I use it for different things, but you can use it for that.
You know, the reason I like using a shank, and this one's, or excuse me, a rod, and by the way, this one's too thick. I like having a rod that's roughly the same thickness, and usually it's a brass stock, the same thickness of my shank, because I want to have it elevated, because the reality is the hammers never rest on these cushions. They're elevated a little bit, roughly that shank's distance. And so sometimes we have to work with what we have.
Yeah, but no, I've definitely seen technicians go like really high, but yeah, you're right. There's no sense in going more than what the hammer line or what the string height is going to be.
Yes,
No point.
exactly. So I'm looking at this, and these are actually pretty good, but I am seeing this one right here, and it's moving to this side. So here we go. Look at that really close. I'm going to see if I can zoom in a bit. It's subtle. And actually, I can't tell if it's this one moving to this side or this one moving to this side. So that's what you have to check. And actually, I think it's this one right here is moving to my right. Okay, and so what I'm going to do to correct that is this. I'm going to go ahead, remove the screw of that flange, and because it's wanting to move to this side, Grant, just bear with me a second because I'm doing this in reverse because I have the camera set up. So I actually want to go ahead and put the tape on the side that it wants to go to. That way it helps correct that. But look at this. There is already a piece of traveling tape on there. And so instead of putting on a piece on the opposite side, what I'm going to do is actually remove that piece of paper instead. And so that's typically what I do. So now I'm going to go ahead and test it, because a lot of times, it may be that the technician didn't get it right the first time, and now that's the case. So what I'm seeing is that it's actually moving a little. Oh, sorry. It's actually moving now a little bit too far the opposite way, because that was a fairly thick piece of tape that I just took off. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of tape to this opposite side.
Yeah,
So,
I was going to ask, I've run into that where I have to take the tape off, but at the same time, I don't want to assume that the technician did it wrong. Is there something that could change that would then make what they did, worse? I think maybe Jake mentioned something, but could it get worse?
It can get worse. So yes, that's a good question. So you don't always have to assume that the technician did it wrong to begin with. Okay, that looks way better. But what can happen, and I'll just pull one of these off so you can see. There could be a slight bit of movement and twisting right here. And that will create that movement and the travel of the shanks. And I have found that to be the case. So never assume that the technician necessarily got it wrong or that they got it right. Just test. And by the way, somebody showed me this because it really helps simplify it to me. And they said, David, all that you're really doing with these, with this, is you're making it so that all of these the tops of all these are all absolutely level, and we don't want just kind of side to side. And that's really where this comes into place. We're wedging a little piece of tape on either below one side or the other to straighten it. That's typically what's going on, is we're straightening it. And so I'm pretty happy with this section now. I'm going to call that good unless I see anything that's really jumping out. This one kind of is still bugging me. So if I feel like it's going to this side, so I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of tape to that side. And you're going to get to the point where you're like, I can't even tell now. It's one or the other. It's doing something. Once you're at that point, you're usually in the clear if it's that hard to tell. And by the way, please don't do this. This is like a pet peeve of mine, is when a technician will leave a little bit of this tape on the edge. Just clean that off, I don't want to see that. We don't want to see that. We don't want to see that. All right, I am happy with that. Now I'm just going to kind of move to the next one. Again, we're doing the same process. I'm lifting up. By the way, Stacy, if people are asking questions, if you could like shout them out, or because I just can't, it's kind of far for me to see.
I will.
Okay, here we go. Let's look at this section right here. Same process.
David, what are a few alternatives to traveling paper if you don't have any? Like, could you use masking tape or like a mailing envelope, the sticky side?
You know that like washer tape that's out there? It's very similar where it's not too sticky, but it's still.
I've just used paper. Literally just paper, and I cut little strips. One time I had to use like receipts, like because I was like, I don't have anything, and I didn't even have any paper, so I just cut up some receipts and cut just a small little bit in this size, and I just kind of put that in there, and it worked.
It is like, it's just like masking tape though. It just doesn't, it's not as sticky though because it's so thin. It doesn't, so
That's right.
yeah, I'd say, yeah. Good question though.
All right, this one's bugging me. I feel like it's moving to this side a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of paper to the side that it wants to go, so it kind of offsets it. And I just checked, and yes, certainly there's no other traveling tape that I need to remove.
So David, is this kind of where you get into the same thing as full regulation, where it's how many passes do you want to get to make it better and better?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So typically I'll do this, a rough pass of this and get the bulk of everything. And then I'll do my my burning or squaring off of my hammers. I'll do a quick pass of that. And then I'll come back and do one more pass of both the traveling and then the burning to really kind of hone it in, because I don't know, I think I have like undiagnosed ADHD. So I like to move on and rhythm of everything. But you can see here, it's just like there's not, at least with this one, there's just not a lot of work that needs to be done. You're going to have, in this one, I think we'll be lucky if we have a dozen that we need to do. Woo, wait, now we're getting to something. This one right here is moving to this side quite a bit. Do you see that on your end? It's kind of hard to see, but it's kind of what we're looking for. And so since it's moving that way, I'm going to put that tape on this side to kind of offset that movement.
I might have missed this, David. Did you burn these first, or do you do that after this?
Say it again.
Do you burn them first, or do you travel them first? I might have missed
Typically, no. I'm typically always traveling first, unless the hammers are so crazy out of line. You know what I mean? Like if they're so bad and need to be squared off and burned over. Typically, I'm always doing this traveling. So it needs more. I'm going to go ahead and add another layer of this. And that will happen sometimes. It's not just one or two. Sometimes I'm doing, 2 or 3 layers of this traveling tape to really offset the traveling that I don't want it to go to.
So David, Mike posted the question. I'll read off, but I think I know the answer, and we'll have you chime in afterwards. Mike was asking whether the traveling and burning is part of the fall underneath the regulation of the action. And yeah, I think it is. It's considered part of the preparatory steps to the main regulation.
Yes, that's a great question. And we've talked about this before. There's what we as technicians would love to do as the right way of doing it. And then there's what customers are willing to pay and have done. And so typically I'll do, a quick pass of this. So for instance, I'm including this work in the repinning of this action. So we charge, I don't know, $1,200 to $1,500, and repinned the hammer rail. And now I'm doing this as a kind of a value added. I feel like it has my name on it. I want to quickly go through and do my burning and traveling. And so it will take me probably an hour. It's just, this one doesn't require a lot. This is a 20-year-old Mason and Hamlin, I don't know, 6.5 foot grand piano. It's not going to need a lot. I can kind of just do it. For the most part, unless I'm doing a full like 2 or 3 day regulation, I'm not doing any of this type of work. So, and sometimes it's about what's going to make the most amount of difference. So sometimes I'm like, well, I do need to do a little bit of burning, a little bit of traveling, but I really need to do my hammer surfacing because these things are bad. And so I'll spend more time on that, or I'll bolster my knuckles, or I'll repin some of this or some of that. So it's usually there's a price limit or a budget that we have to fall within. And so I'm kind of figuring out what can I do for $2,500 and figuring it that way. But doing a little bit of this is always a good idea, even if just getting the outliers.
If you had to let's say you only had, okay, I got 30 minutes to do a little bit of this because you've time blocked, okay, I need a lot of time to do everything else.
Yeah.
Would you focus mainly there in the mid-range and not worry about the high and low end of the keyboard?
I would do every area, every section, but I would only get to the ones that are like whoosh, they're really moving.
So you'd look at the worst 3 in each section and at least do each section. Yeah.
Yep, and then I would go through and do my my burning or squaring off of the hammerheads, and again going to find the worst ones. And as you'll see, it can get kind of hairy when you're doing the burning and squaring off of the hammerheads because it is actually more difficult than the traveling. The traveling is good as a precursor, kind of to get you in the mindset of seeing that space change, you know, and that movement, which will come in handy once we start to do our squaring and burning. All right, here we go. All right, I'm seeing this one right here, moving again to my left. You know, it's going to this side. So I'm going to offset that. And I can see that somebody's already put some paper there. So I'm just adding, really just adding to it. And it's always kind of a, oh, good. So another technician saw the same thing, so I'm in the right direction. That's better, but still not perfect. So I'm going to add one more. Now, back to Mike's question. Would this be considered a full regulation? This is one of those steps that a lot of technicians not only don't do, but I'll be honest, a lot of them don't even know. A lot of them don't even know this step exists, if I'm honest with you. It's just because most technicians won't come to this or won't be taught this, and so I was working on pianos for years before a mentor that I started working with, who was doing full rebuilding, was like, "Hey, have you burned and traveled the hammers and the shanks?" And I'm like, he's like, "Oh, you don't know how to do that?" I'm like, no. And so he showed me. I was probably 5 years into this. So that's not uncommon. But luckily here, we get to learn about it. Final section. We're in the base. I'm trying to make it so that it doesn't tip over. Oh, I guess I could always just do that. Move the camera. That's a good idea. It's late. It's dark out. All right, last bit. I'm happy with that. Calling that good. So let's go to our burning. I'm going to go ahead and try not to trip the power. We're gonna cross our fingers on that one. I'm gonna turn off this heat though, because it's getting a little toasty. Just a second.
Has anyone seen the trick of this? Taking the stack off and putting it on the table upside down to do your traveling.
All right, let's again start with our treble section. This is by far the easiest section for us to start with because we have these hammers that are straight up and down. As you get, straight up and down, they're bored with no angle. As you get to the tenor and into the bass, we have our hammers that are bored at an angle to match the angle of the strings. You know, we have cross sections of strings and string angles. So these sections are actually a little bit easier to see in the sections where the hammers are bored just kind of with no angle to them. All right. Actually, what I'm going to do is this. Buckle up, everybody. We're going for a ride. I'm going to get a little bit more of a top-down view. Yeah. As my kids would say, the sleigh.
The camera roller coaster here.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's do this. So, typically, I will go ahead and lift these hammers from the jacks. So I'm lifting these hammers up and down using the jack tender right here. And what I'm looking for, this is going to be really hairy, y'all, because I'm going to try to do this live reverse with the camera. All right, that's pretty good. And so I usually start from one end to the other. So I'm going to go from high treble, and I'm just getting this angle so I can really easily see that the spacing on either side of this hammer. And it's really helpful, by the way, to do this and have something that is black or really dark on the opposite side of the hammers. That way you can really see that dark spacing in between. You know, it's just a lot easier just to see. So I'm just going to go ahead and lift this up. And that looks like it's traveling pretty well. And I'm guessing for the most part, these will all be squared up. Actually, that one needs to go over to my left. So got our heat source, and I'm back a little bit. I'm going to apply even heat, and so I'm kind of twisting the head right here, but the heat that I'm applying is right on the shank, and I'm not staying in one spot. I'm moving it back and forth along that shank. Better. That looks way better. Let's do this one too. Yeah, oddly enough, I actually think a lot of these need to get burned over to my left. You're right. Now, as you get more familiar with this, you'll be able to see it really quickly what you need to be looking for. But early on, if I'm honest with you, when I was doing this, I probably only got the really, really bad ones because those are what I could see and notice were bad. And so as we get to the base, I'm going to show you. I'll like burn one over really far just to kind of show you what I'm talking about.
Yeah, what I do is if some of them are like really bad, then I'll go ahead and do those first and not worry about the rest, and then go back over. And
Oh,
yeah,
totally. And by the way, a lot of times I'll look at one side or the other, you know, and I do kind of look at, I kind of take them both and look at them both, but usually I'm looking at one side of the hammer or the other, and I'm just keep on that same side. Michael, have you heard of that before too?
I have not, but it makes sense because you have a rhythm and you have a process and you're kind of following that process. It's sort of like when you're trying to align the jack to knuckle and you're looking side down the,
Yeah.
you're kind of looking at the same side all the way down, and just working it from one side to the other.
I have that butane pen envy now, though. Thanks a lot for that, Michael.
You're welcome.
All
It's my
right,
Thanksgiving gift to you.
there you go. All right, let's do this. Let's kind of go really close. And I'm going to go ahead and just be not nice to this one. I'm just going to go ahead and move this one way over. And you'll get to hammers that are like this. Actually, let's go worse. And by the way, it's harder to do the burning on newer pianos. Can anybody guess why? Why would it be harder to do the newer ones?
Because of the wood and the amount of moisture in the wood compared to old wood.
That's exactly it. Yeah, the older wood shanks are way drier, way easier to move. I have to heat these up quite a bit, but this is a good one to see. Look at that. So again, looking on this side of it right here, look at that space shrink as that hammer goes up. So that space is shrinking quite a bit. And conversely, this space is getting bigger. So we want to tilt and burn that hammer in the direction that it wants to go. It says, hey, I want to go that way. Help me go that way. We're like, sure, dude, let's do it. And so we just simply heat it and move it over. It's looking better, but I can still see it wandering over to that side. And again, I like to do this in 2 major passes because guess what could happen in between the passes? Anybody? They start to move back a little bit because as the shank kind of cools down and kind of reforms, there could be a little bit more that's necessary. And so a lot of times I'm going a little bit past where I want to go because it's going to potentially want to drift back to where it's been for, I don't know, decades. So keep that in mind. Going through. These are actually looking pretty good. Pretty happy with them. Questions about this so far? Does it make sense to everybody?
I have a question, David. Why the burning last? It seems like since the burning's individually, that it might have a net positive effect on the traveling for the tape.
You know what? I thought that they were connected, but they're really not. You have to think of them as very separate. The traveling really does boil down right here. We're moving these in a certain direction to really level these off so that all of the shanks travel in unison. And so, whereas when we're squaring off our hammerheads, we're really just, I know what you're saying, Robert, and it took me a long time of just doing it to kind of be able to separate the two. And, but they are separate. So you would really dial in your traveling, get a good pass of that traveling so that you know that that baseline is set, so that that is all there. And then it's really, you are only moving the angle of the hammers. That's all we're doing when we're squaring off the hammer heads. The only reason we are lifting up that hammer is to see if it's square. It's not that it's traveling correctly, it's that it's at the right proper angle, and we're using that movement and measuring the sides to see if it is at that correct angle. And
That makes sense. I guess it's one's the head and one's the flange.
Exactly.
And
One's the
they're
head,
two
one's the
separate.
flange.
Okay.
It's exactly. It's a great question. And it's fun teaching everybody because like you guys like you transport me back to be like, I remember when I had that same question. How did they explain it to me? Oh, they didn't do a good job explaining it to me. Let's see, how can I do that better? All right, so I'm starting to get into a little bit more of that, of the change of the angle. But again, the same thing applies. I'm just slowly raising up these hammers, moving them over, heating up the shank, squaring them off so that they're at the proper angle. So can anybody guess what I'm going to be doing for the reinstall process? What is that going to entail?
You're going to have to line into the strings again?
Well, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I am going to have to do that because, Robert, we repinned this whole thing. So I'm going to have to align the hammers to the strings properly. And there are, as you can see, a little bit of string indentations. So that should go pretty quick. But that's the big one, is I'm going to have to go ahead and align my hammers to the strings. And then I'm really just going to go ahead and just double check everything that that everything's working properly. Again, this is a fairly major surgery, pulling off all of these hammers, doing all that repinning, doing this burning and traveling. By the way, I lubricated all the key pins. I lubricated the wood portions of the key frame. So it should play pretty sweet. So I'm excited about that. Questions about any of this so far? And by the way, it's been fun to see so many people here. That's going to it's about to get real. We're about to get more and more. So this will be fun. We might have to take shifts of multiple classes a day if it gets to the point where there's like 50 people on. We might need to break it up.
Hey, you want those kind of problems.
That's a great problem to have.
It means more people starting to learn Pianocraft.
Oh, Mike had a question. Does anyone know where you could buy a grand piano action? Like, like a model, like one of the test models.
eBay has them for cheap. Yeah, I think somebody just said it was like $200.
Yeah, that's pretty good actually for a grand action model. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I managed to get both a upright and a grand off of eBay.
Yeah,
Nice.
For a reasonable price. I think of course the grand was a little bit more expensive, but I think the upright I got for $100.
Yeah,
the grand was like 170, 180, something like that.
To put your hands on it, it's just a good idea. Now, in the course, we do have the 3D action models, which I'm a big fan of, so you can really see and go underneath and inside and see how the parts work. But boy, putting your hands on something is a really good idea, Mike. So, and yeah, eventually We were looking into having those sold at the school as well, but then all the tariff stuff started happening and it just got really weird. So we kind of put that on the back burner.
Someone asked if you do burning and traveling on the uprights. Can you show how the traveling paper affects the hammers differently on the uprights? Just so it's in the.
Yeah. Let me grab an action really quick.
Yeah, that's a good question.
All right. Let's do this. Whoa, close up. Okay, so we have this nice little action model. And the reality is the burning is really going to be the same. So let's start with that. That's going to be the same. You really just need to make sure you're not going to heat up. I've done this before where like I almost caught the hammer rest rail felt on fire. You just want to make sure that you're getting nice close heat to where you want and not heating up the other parts. So that's going to be kind of the same. You're just going to go ahead and move the hammers close to this, string and seeing how, if they need to be moved over or pivoted over. So how often do I travel upright hammer shanks? I've been doing it for about 25 years plus. 2 times? I think I'm doing it twice. And it was only onesie twosies. It's not something you do very often, but you should know how to do it in case you have, like, if you're in that situation. And so what you would do is, move these hammers towards the strings kind of that same way. And then you would go ahead and be like, okay, this, I'm seeing, let's just say one of them is off to the side. So we would go ahead, let me get a smaller screwdriver. Highly, highly recommend a really skinny, long screwdrivers for, this type of work. Just makes life easier. Let's go ahead and let's mess one of these up, Let's do that. Let's do that.
Yeah, David, so far I haven't traveled any of the uprights that I've worked on, but I have used the burning on a regular basis when you have hammers that are twisted and are rubbing against other hammers and stuff. So that seems like something I'm doing on a fairly regular basis.
100%. 100%.
I do a lot of this on whippings on uprights.
You do?
That? Yeah, like whippings that are too close to each other, things like that.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. All right, so I just added, and I'll show you afterwards, but I just added a bunch of paper to one side, and then we'll test it so that we can get a visual for what we would see and what would be happening. Come on. Well, for one, that angle of the hammer is now really off. So I'm going to go ahead. So here we go. Again, you can see how. So again, this one is what we're going to be looking for. And tell me what direction you see it moving towards. It's subtle. It's easier to see in person, but it's moving to this side. It's moving.
Yeah, I thought it was moving to the outside.
Yeah, it's moving to that outside. And so it's kind of swelling, as it moves closer, it's going off to the side. And so to fix that, we would simply remove the screw for the flange carefully. And if it's wanting to move to that side, which direction should we put that tape?
On the inside.
On the right
The
side.
opposite side in this case. So you remember how we were doing with the grands is we would put it on the same side as where it wants to go. And the opposite is the case in the upright. And so we're going to go ahead and in this case, remove that paper that I just installed. And it should be fine after that. But as you can see, that's what we're doing is we're just putting it on one side or the other. So same basic principle, but it is going to be on the opposite side. And you may have to do it a couple times and mess it up, which is what I've done, you know, or especially early on, you're like, oh shoot, I just made it way worse. What, how, why? Oh, I just put it on the wrong side. And you'll do that a couple times and then you won't. That's a good question, though. So you will definitely burn the hammers more than you will travel them. I'll just say that. You know, the burning and squaring off of the hammers, both in the grand and the upright, that will be something that you will do far more frequently than spending the time to do the traveling. That's just going to be the nature of it. And so once I've done all of this tomorrow, I think Stacy, was it like 10 o'clock tomorrow? So I'm going to go ahead and reinstall this action. And like what Robert said, I'm going to go ahead and space the hammers to the strings, making sure that's all dialed in. And I'm just going to make sure that it plays really nice and evenly. I think I have a 2-hour block there. So I'm just going to kind of really dial it in and make sure that they're really happy with it. This one was swinging like 2 to 3 times. And so here, what I like to feel is having it swing 7 to 9 times. So quite a bit less friction than what was there. And I unfortunately didn't get to play the piano, before one of the technicians brought it in. And so I don't really have an idea with how it feels. I'll definitely show them the swing test. And that is, actually kind of show you that right here. That is actually taking it, showing your customer how evenly everything's moving. And that's a good one to do before you do the work because they're able to see none of those hammers move. They're locked up. And so that's a really good visual cue. I'm probably going to test the down weight and up weight after I reinstall the stack onto the keys because I want to see if it's within the spec. Again, I want about a 50 to 53 down weight, 26 to 28 up weight. And that will, I kind of want to see how close we are to that. That'll be something we should talk about at some point is down weight, up weight ratios and stuff like that.
Yeah, that would be a good one.
I could just tell Michael, I could just tell you're like, who I want to know.
Well, I had a discussion with one of the techs here in Indy about that one day, and it was actually pretty fascinating.
Yeah. When we talk
Render has a new tool for that, I believe, that will do all the keys instead of the little grams brass.
Oh, you have one?
No, Render makes a new one. I don't have one though. It's about $800, I think.
Yeah, I saw that. That's an action geometry robot. I don't understand it. I think Alan up north has one. I don't know. I'm old school. We need to get some more people that are pushing that envelope of just like newer technologies because I'm more of your tried and true. You're doing swing tests instead of gram gauges. But you need both. Luckily, Jacob's pretty on top of stuff like that, though.
David, you said that you
piano was that? I'm sorry, Robert. David, do you know what Horowitz's down weight was?
Say it again.
Do you know what Horowitz's down weight was?
Well, it must. Ooh, okay. So here I have a guess. I have a guess. The key dip was so shallow because he wanted to fly. He wanted it to just be very, very subtle, very light. So I'm guessing the down weight 40 to 42 grams down weight.
I believe so. It might have been even less, but
Really?
Franz would always say you can practically blow on the keys and they would move.
Crazy. So Horowitz, he had I got to meet his technician. His technician was Franz Moore, and he was just going over what he did. And the key dip for Horowitz, he wanted it super shallow. Like we're talking like a 1/4 inch, like just nothing. And in order to do that and get proper aftertouch, that affects two other, you'd have to adjust two other adjustments in order to get proper aftertouch. And so he had to raise those hammers like crazy. And also, when you're in the concert scene, you don't want to have a really wide let off. And so he had a really tight let off, really shallow key dip, and a hammer blow distance that was next to nothing to accomplish that aftertouch. I didn't get to play the piano. Other people were just like swarming all over it. I wish I did, but I do have this one customer, and he's very much open to trying to just redo his piano to that spec, but he hasn't pulled the trigger yet. When he does, I'll do a video on it because eventually it'll happen. And that'll be fun. I think he's going to hate it, by the way. I think he'll do it and then he'll have me redo it.
Like, if you think about race cars and experimental cars, how you push the envelope with everything, isn't that kind of what you're doing when you're putting it to those fine of specifications?
Well, you're really, it is kind of unfair because so many of the composers of old, they were composing music on pianos they played very differently. You have the harpsichord, clavichord. These did not play like your modern piano. They were subtle. You could play very quick, and it was a different experience. And so it's kind of crazy. Don't even get me started on my soapbox for concert pianists. That's a we don't record kind of conversation. As I have thoughts on that. And Victor, you'd probably get a kick out of this.
So David, kind of going back a step, since I wasn't able to be for the repinning, so the customer was having issues with the playability of the piano, so that's why the repinning job. Is that correct?
No, it was actually the technician. I'll use the one that I did because I know this one for sure. I was playing the piano and I just wasn't happy with the repetition. I felt like it was not playing as, I didn't have the control, especially with soft pianissimo. It wasn't fluid. I think that was the best way. And so I pulled the action out and I just went through and was like, okay, I'm just going to test a couple of these. How well are they swinging? And as soon as I tested them, they were swinging 1 to 2 times on the one that I was doing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that's what I want. And it was swinging like 1 or 2 times. And so I brought the customer in, showed them, said, hey, I don't know if you've noticed the playability of your piano feeling a little stiff, hard to play, especially when it's soft pieces. The husband comes in, he's like, yes, I have been having that issue. I didn't know about that until I pulled everything apart because the wife was like, no, I haven't noticed anything. And the wife or the husband comes in like, absolutely. Fix this, please. And so that was the scenario with the one that I worked on. And so a lot of times the things that you will uncover and discover are there and the customers will know about them, but you might not know until you get further along in the service call that this is an issue.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I'm excited for both these customers to have their piano This customer is getting their piano in time for Thanksgiving, which this is such a fun time of year to be a technician and working in customers' houses. It's just I love it. It's my favorite time.
Yeah, her son was the one that played this piano, and he's home for Thanksgiving. And so it's like it's a big deal. It's a big deal. And I think it was the son who had mentioned to the mom about it. And so when Daniel brought it up, she's like, oh, my son did talk about that. So it's kind of cool. She's like surprising him with it, kind of thing.
Oh, that's perfect.
Sweet, huh?
Well, thank you for joining. If you have any questions, you know where to go. I think we're doing a book study, and I think we're doing something on Friday, so we'll have more to come. Stick around if you want to hear my spiel on concert artists and my thoughts on the whole scene and where it's at. But I will see you on the next one.
Okay.